Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're taking a look at Johann Hari's book, Lost Connections.
Oh, this will be interesting.
Have you had a chance to read through it?
Yeah, I have, and it's really thought-provoking.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a different way of thinking about, depression and anxiety and all of that kind of stuff.
We always hear about like the chemical imbalance theory, right?
Right.
But Hari kind of flips that on its head.
Yeah, he kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing.
Yeah, and looks at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, so instead of just thinking about it as like a purely biological thing, like is something wrong with your brain?
Right.
He's looking at it from the perspective of disconnection.
Yeah, and how that plays a major role,
Yeah, so disconnection from like meaningful work or other people or nature or even like a hopeful future.
Right.
Yeah, and he argues that these disconnections are actually at the root of a lot of our modern day, mental health struggles.
Yeah, it's like our well-being is suffering because we're so disconnected from these fundamental things.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like we're social creatures. We need to feel connected. We need to feel like our work has meaning,
Absolutely, and to feel like we have a future to look forward to.
Right, exactly.
Which I think a lot of people are struggling with these days.
Oh, absolutely. And he even kind of challenges that whole like chemical imbalance narrative, right?
He does.
Like he talks about Irving Kershaw's research.
Yes.
That suggested that the effects of antidepressants might largely be due to the placebo effect.
Yeah, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
If they're not really working any better than a sugar pill,
right, then
what's going on there?
Yeah. And then he brings in expert voices like David Healy.
Oh, yeah.
Who argue that this whole like serotonin deficiency theory.
Right.
This idea that depression is caused by like a lack of serotonin in the brain.
Right.
It may never have been scientifically proven and may have been more of a marketing ploy than anything else.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about depression.
It does. And he doesn't like dismiss the biological factors entirely.
No, not at all.
It's more about like expanding our understanding.
Right.
And recognizing that there might be a lot more at play.
Yeah, it's not just this one-size-fits-all explanation.
Right. And so then he introduces these 9 causes of disconnection. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is where it gets really into the meat of it.
Yeah.
So, we've got things like meaningful work, connection with other people, a sense of purpose, connection with nature, a hopeful future.
Yeah, and even things like status and respect.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah, those are all things that we as humans like fundamentally need.
We do.
To thrive.
We do.
And when those needs aren't met, when we're disconnected from these things.
That's when the problems start.
Yeah, that's when the warning signs start to pop up.
The depression, the anxiety, all of that.
Yeah, it's like our mental health is screaming.
Yeah.
Hey, I need these things to thrive.
Like, pay attention.
Right.
Something's wrong here.
It's fascinating, but it's also kind of scary, don't you think?
It is a little bit, yeah, because it really highlights how much our modern way of life is contributing to this disconnection.
And it's not just like oh, I'm feeling a little bit down today. It's like a deep-seated, like almost primal kind of.
Yes, like an existential
discomfort.
Discomfort, yeah.
Yeah, and what I think is really cool about Hari's approach is that he reframes depression and anxiety not as personal failings or brain malfunctions, but as signals of disconnection.
Yeah, it's like our bodies and minds are trying to tell us something.
Yeah.
Something's out of balance.
Yeah, like, hey, pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Something's not right.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's explore some of these disconnections in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, let's do it.
Where do you want to start?
Well, why don't we start with something that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Okay.
Disconnection from meaningful work.
Oh, yeah. We all know what it's like to feel stuck in a job that just drains us.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Soul crushing.
Soul crushing, yeah.
Monday morning dread.
But Hari takes it a step further.
He does.
He argues that a lack of control and reward in the workplace can actually lead to real despair.
Yeah. He uses the example of Joe Phillips.
Oh, right, Joe, yeah.
Who felt totally trapped and hopeless in his job.
Yeah, he was mixing paint all day long.
Yeah, day in, day out, just...
And he had no control over...
No control.
His tasks or anything.
And no real sense of reward or purpose in what he was doing.
Right, and his story really highlights this key insight that it's not just about disliking your job.
Right.
It's about feeling powerless and lacking a sense of purpose.
It's that lack of agency that really gets to you.
Yeah, and that can really lead to a sense of hopelessness.
Absolutely.
And it's not just Joe's experience. Hari backs this up with research from Michael Marmot and his famous Whitehall studies.
Oh, yeah. Marmot's work is fascinating.
Yeah. So Marmot showed that people who had more control in their jobs were significantly less likely to experience depression and even heart attacks.
Yeah. The link between control and well-being is pretty clear.
It's amazing how much our work impacts our overall well-being, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we'd spend so much of our lives working.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it would have such a big impact on our mental and physical health.
It's not just about the paycheck, right?
No, it's about feeling valued, having a sense of agency, contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
And when that's missing, it's like a piece of us goes dormant.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like we're not fully alive.
Okay, so let's move on to another crucial form of disconnection.
Okay.
Our relationships with other people.
Oh, yeah. Loneliness.
Loneliness, right? I think we can all relate to feeling isolated at times.
Especially in today's world.
Especially in today's world, right?
Yeah.
With all the technology and everything.
So much connection, but yet so much isolation.
It's a weird paradox.
It is.
But Hari reminds us that loneliness isn't just an emotional state.
Right.
It has real, tangible consequences for our health.
Exactly. And he brings in John Cacioppo's research.
Yeah.
To really drive that point home.
Cacioppo showed that feeling lonely actually triggers the same stress response in our bodies as physical pain.
Yeah, like your body can't tell the difference between being lonely and being physically hurt.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
And Hari even shares that heartbreaking story of the man crying alone in a motel room with a broken jaw, completely isolated.
Oh, yeah. It's a powerful image
of
just how devastating loneliness can be.
Yeah, it really highlights that we're social creatures at our core.
We are.
You know, you need connection. We need belonging.
We need each other.
Yeah, and the stats are pretty alarming.
They are.
Did you know that in just a few decades, the number of people who report having no close friends has skyrocketed?
I believe it's a real epidemic.
It's crazy. So many lonely people.
It makes you wonder what's driving that trend and what we can do about it.
Absolutely. Okay, so ready for a slightly different perspective.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so picture this depressed bonobos in zoos.
Okay, interesting.
So Hari uses this image to introduce his concept of modern forms of captivity.
Okay, I like this.
So he argues that just like those bonobos, taken out of their natural habitats, humans might also be suffering from a kind of captivity, a disconnection from the natural world that we evolved to be a part of.
Yeah, it's like we've created these artificial environments for ourselves that are cut off from nature.
Yeah, so you're saying that living in concrete jungles glued to our screens might actually be messing with our mental health.
I think it's a big part of it.
It's like our modern lifestyle is a form of disconnection in itself.
Yeah, we're constantly bombarded with stimulation.
Yes.
But we're starved for the kind of deep connection that we get from nature.
Yeah. And it's not just a hunch, right? He shares the story of Isabel Benkei.
Oh, yeah, the biologist.
Yeah. Who struggled with profound depression while living in a city.
Cut off from nature.
Cut off from nature. And she actually found relief by immersing herself back in the natural world.
It's amazing how healing nature can be.
Yeah, so it's not just about taking a walk in the park once in a while.
No.
It's about fundamentally rethinking our relationship with nature.
Right.
And recognizing how deeply we depend on it for our well-being.
It's about remembering that we are a part of nature.
Yeah.
Not separate from it.
And now this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Hari takes this idea even further and connects it to the disconnection from a hopeful and secure future.
This is a big one.
Yeah, and this one feels really relevant, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, with everything going on in the world, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and anxious about the future.
Climate change, economic uncertainty, political instability. It's a lot.
It's a lot,
to deal with.
Yeah, and Hari uses the powerful story of Chief Plentycoos.
Oh, yeah.
A Native American leader who witnessed the devastation of his people's way of life.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah, I'm guessing this wasn't just about losing their land.
No.
Oh, right.
It was about losing their sense of identity.
Right.
Their connection to something bigger than themselves.
Their whole way of life.
Their whole way of life, exactly.
Yeah.
And as their world crumbled around them, they experienced a profound sense of hopelessness and despair.
Yeah. And Hari draws a parallel to our modern day anxieties.
Right.
Arguing that when we lack a sense of security and hope for the future, it can lead to a similar kind of psychological distress.
Yeah, it's like when you don't have a clear sense of where you're going.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel lost in a drift.
Like you're just reacting to whatever life throws at you.
Exactly. And that lack of control can be incredibly debilitating.
Totally. And he suggests that this disconnection from a hopeful future is further exacerbated by the constant bombardment of consumerist messages that tell us that happiness can be bought, that we're not good enough.
Unless we have the latest gadget or the perfect lifestyle.
Right. So we're not only disconnected from each other and from nature, but also from a sense of what truly matters, what truly brings lasting fulfillment.
Yeah, it's like we're chasing shadows, always striving for something that's just out of reach.
And that constant striving can leave us feeling empty and exhausted.
Totally burned out.
Totally.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, is there a different way?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll delve into Hari's concept of reconnecting strategies and discover what concrete steps we can take to address these disconnections and cultivate a deeper sense of meaning and well-being in our lives.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to hear what he has to say. Let's do it. Okay, so we've talked about all this disconnection right from work and relationships and nature and even a hopeful future. It's a lot.
It is. Yeah, it can feel pretty overwhelming.
So where do we go from here? What does Hari suggest we do about all of this?
Well, he has this really cool idea that he calls reconnecting strategies.
Okay, reconnected?
But reconnecting strategies.
Yeah, or social antidepressants.
Okay, I feel like that better.
Right, so it's basically addressing the root causes of these disconnections rather than just trying to mask the symptoms with medication.
Okay, so instead of just popping a pill.
Right, exactly. It's about actually making changes in our lives and in our society to create more connection and meaning.
I'm into it. Tell me more.
So one of the examples that he highlights is this medical center in East London called the Bromley by Bow Center.
Okay, Bromley by Bow.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this place is that they don't just hand out prescriptions.
Oh, so what do?
They focus on reconnecting patients to meaningful activities and communities.
Okay, so it's like they're prescribing gardening or art classes or support groups instead of pills. Exactly. It's a great way to put it. They offer all sorts of programs designed to help people find a sense of purpose, belonging, and connection.
That's awesome. So it's about treating the whole person, right? Not just the symptoms.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that sometimes the best medicine isn't a pill at all. It's community, it's purpose, it's connection.
I love that.
And Hari explores a bunch of other reconnecting strategies too, like mindfulness and compassion practices, psychedelic-assisted therapy, and even addressing childhood trauma.
Whoa, psychedelics. That seems a little out there.
I know it might sound strange, but there's actually a growing body of research exploring the therapeutic potential of psychedelics for treating things like depression and addiction.
Right.
Yeah. So when used in a safe and controlled setting, psychedelics like psilocybin, which is the active compound in magic mushrooms, can help people access deeper levels of consciousness and reconnect with a sense of meaning, purpose, and connection to something larger than themselves.
So it's like they're helping people break free from those negative thought patterns and see the world in a new way.
Exactly. And it can be a really powerful tool for healing and transformation.
That's fascinating. What about mindfulness and compassion practices? What does Hari say about those?
Well, he's a big advocate for things like meditation.
Okay.
He talks about his own personal experience with meditation and how it helped him manage his anxiety.
I've always wanted to try meditation, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
It's definitely worth exploring. And there's a lot of research showing that meditation can actually rewire our brains, making us less reactive to stress and more resilient in the face of challenges.
So it's like training our minds to be more present, more compassionate, and less caught up in that constant chatter of thoughts.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and connection.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about something a bit heavier, the role of childhood trauma.
Yeah, this is a tough one, but it's so important to address.
Definitely. We talked earlier about how those early experiences can really shape our well-being.
Right. And Hari goes deep into this, exploring the research on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Yeah, and this research shows a clear link between childhood trauma and a whole range of physical and mental health issues later in life.
It's like those early wounds can leave these invisible scars that affect how we see the world, how we relate to others, and even how we treat ourselves.
Yeah, and it can make it really hard to form healthy connections.
So what can we do about it?
Well, Hari emphasizes the importance of acknowledging this trauma and actively working to heal from it.
It's not about just burying it and pretending it didn't happen.
Right. It's about facing it head on and finding ways to move through the pain.
Okay, so what are some of the ways to do that?
Well, there are a lot of different therapeutic approaches, like trauma-informed therapy, and even simple acts of self-compassion can make a big difference.
So it's about recognizing that we're not broken, but we might have some healing to do.
Exactly. And this ties back into that bigger picture of reconnection. By addressing these deep-seated wounds, we can create a more solid foundation for connection, both with ourselves and with others.
Okay, so we've talked about some individual reconnected strategies.
Right.
What about those bigger societal solutions that Hari mentioned?
Yeah, he argues that we also need to address the systemic issues that contribute to disconnection in the first place.
So it's not just about fixing ourselves, it's about creating a society that supports our well-being.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So Hari proposes some pretty bold ideas like universal basic income to alleviate economic insecurity and free people up to pursue meaningful work.
Universal basic income. Huh, that's a pretty radical idea.
It is, but it's gaining more and more traction. And it could really help to create a more equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Interesting. What else does he suggest?
He also talks about the need for stricter regulations on advertising to counter those relentless messages that fuel our insecurities and desires.
Oh yeah, those ads that make us feel like we need to buy more stuff to be happy.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of building strong, connected communities where people feel a sense of belonging.
So it's about shifting our values as a society away from individualism and consumerism and toward connection and well-being.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical vision, but it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is. It makes you wonder if it's actually possible.
Well, Hari doesn't just leave us with a bunch of pie-in-the-sky ideas. He points to real-world examples of communities that are actually doing this.
Oh, really? Like where?
Like the Cody neighborhood in Berlin, where residents came together to fight gentrification and create a more equitable and connected community.
Wow. So it's not just some utopian dream. There are people out there actually making this happen.
Exactly. And that's what makes Hari's message so powerful. He acknowledges the depth of the problems we face, but he also offers a roadmap for change, both individually and collectively.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to create a different kind of future.
And that's really what we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into Hari's concluding arguments and see what concrete steps he suggests we can take to move from disconnection to reconnection and build a better future together.
All right, so we've really dug into those 9 causes of disconnection, and we've talked about some pretty interesting potential solutions.
Yeah, we have.
Everything from like individual stuff like meditation to like big societal changes like universal basic income.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide range.
It is. It's a lot. It feels like Hari's calling for like a total revolution in how we think about and approach mental health.
He is. I mean, he's really challenging that traditional view of, depression and anxiety as purely individual problems.
Yeah, like fix yourself, get yourself together.
Yeah, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing.
Right. And he's saying, no, it's not just about that.
Right. It's much bigger than that.
There's this whole other layer of disconnection from, our communities, from nature, from a hopeful future.
And he argues that our culture actually makes this disconnection worse.
Yeah, like our culture is almost designed to make us feel disconnected.
With the focus on, individualism and constant productivity and material wealth.
Right, like we're constantly being told that we need to be better and do more and have more.
Yeah, and that just leads to more disconnection and more distress.
And it's not just about our individual choices, right?
No, it's about the systems that we live in.
Right, like the economic systems, the social structures, even the messages that we're bombarded with every day.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So, okay, big question.
Yeah.
Is there any hope of actually changing the system?
Well, Hari believes there is.
Okay, good.
He thinks that the first step is a shift in perspective.
Okay.
Like, we need to start seeing our well-being as a collective concern, not just an individual responsibility.
Yeah, so it's not just about me fixing myself. It's about us creating a society that supports well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. And that means moving away from that purely biomedical model of mental health.
Okay.
And embracing a more holistic approach.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, for individuals, it means things like building strong social connections.
Okay.
Engaging in meaningful work, spending time in nature.
So the basics.
Yeah, the basics, but we so often forget about them.
We do. We get caught up in the busyness of life.
Yeah, and we start to believe that happiness comes from, buying more stuff or achieving more things.
And Hari's saying, no, that's not where true happiness comes from.
Right, it comes from connection and purpose and meaning.
So how do we get there? How do we create a society that actually supports those values?
Well, Hari has some pretty bold ideas.
Lay on me.
Things like universal basic income, to provide a safety net so people can pursue their passions without the fear of financial ruin.
Okay.
Stricter regulations on advertising to protect our mental well-being.
Yeah, get those ads out of my face.
And investments in community spaces and initiatives that foster connection.
So basically a world where well-being and connection are prioritized.
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds amazing, but it also feels kind of impossible.
I know, it's a big vision.
It is.
But Hari reminds us that change is always possible.
Okay.
He points to examples like that neighborhood in Berlin, Cody,
Oh, yeah.
where the residents came together to create a more equitable and connected community.
So it's not just a dream, it can actually happen.
It can. And it's already happening in some places.
That's really inspiring.
It is. It's a reminder that we have more power than we think.
Yeah.
And that when we come together, we can create real change.
So it's not just about individual self-improvement.
Yeah.
It's about collective action.
Exactly.
And it's about demanding a better future.
Yes.
For ourselves and for everyone.
And Hari reminds us that those feelings of depression and anxiety that we're all struggling with,
Yeah.
they're not something to be ashamed of.
Right.
They're messages, they're invitations.
To reconnect.
To reconnect to what truly matters.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's not about ignoring those feelings or trying to suppress them.
It's about listening to them.
Yeah. And figuring out what they're trying to tell us.
Wow, Lost Connections has been such a thought-provoking read.
It really has.
It's more than just a book, it's a call to action.
Yeah. A call to wake up and challenge the status quo and create a world where connection and meaning and well-being are not luxuries, but fundamental human rights.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Lost Connections.
It's a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And we hope it sparks some new ideas for how you can reconnect in your own life.
Because remember, reconnection starts with you.
Until next time, keep diving.